Hi, this is the third video in the JavaScript series. In the last video, we set up the tools, Node.js and VS Code, and the basic environment. In this video, we'll understand one of the most important JavaScript fundamentals, variables, and the difference between var, let, and const, simply and clearly. So, what are variables? JavaScript variables are containers used to store data so we can use, change, and reuse values in our code. And why do we need them? They help us remember information like numbers, text, or results instead of writing the same value again and again. So we'll first start with writing the syntax for declaring variables. So we'll first have a keyword, which is var or let or const, and an identifier, let's say name, and the value, which is a string. So this is an identifier. An identifier is a name given to something in JavaScript, so we can refer to it later. So it is used to identify variables, functions, parameters like this. But here, name is an identifier. First, we need to understand what can be a valid identifier. So a valid identifier must start with a letter or underscore or a dollar symbol. Letter or a dollar symbol. And it can include letters, numbers, and again, underscore or a dollar symbol. Now, and it cannot start with a number. Also, it cannot use keywords. Now we'll see examples for each of these. So it must start with a letter, which is, let's say, name, or an underscore symbol, age, or a dollar symbol, price. And it can include letters, numbers, underscore, and dollar symbol. Let's say count 1. Now, coming to what it should not have, it cannot start with a number. So you cannot use this. When you write something like this, it will throw you a syntax error. And also, it cannot use keywords. So there are many JavaScript keywords, which is like, for example, let is a keyword, function is a keyword, new is a keyword. So you cannot use these names as your identifiers. That's it about the identifiers. Now let's discuss the actual JavaScript variables. So the first one is var. Var is the old way of declaring JavaScript variables, and it is function scoped. What do I mean when I say function scoped? Old way. Yeah. So let's say there is a function. We call it test. And let's say there is an if block, and you declare a variable inside the if block. And you are trying to access the variable console log outside this block. So what JavaScript does when we write a program and when we hit run, what it does is, first it reads the entire scope. So this is the function scope, and this is a block scope, and this entire program is global scope. So if I write something here, this variable is in its global scope, so it is accessible entirely throughout the program. So when JavaScript first, when we hit run, what JavaScript does is it reads the entire scope once. So it is reading, let's say it is reading this program, and it found a function, and now it is reading the function scope. So because var is function scoped, var is accessible throughout this function. So even if it is declared inside this if block. If I hit run now, you can see Alex printing. So this is what function scope is. It is not limited to blocks, and var can be redeclared. So let's comment this out for now. Oh, it's right here. Scope. So redeclaration. So once you declare a variable, var allows you to redeclare it. Now if you try to print variable a, because it allows redeclaration, it is not throwing an error. It does not see anything wrong with this line 19, and it prints a, which is 20. But just imagine this. So you wrote a program and you took variable name a in the first line itself, and then after you wrote some 30 lines and then you wanted another variable, and you declared with var, and you forgot that you used a and you used a again. Now because redeclaration is allowed using var, you will have bugs. You'll have serious bugs, because when in the place you want to use 10, you will use 20, and after redeclaring it, you will not be able to use 10 because these two have same name. This is one of the reason why you should avoid using var. And again, it can be reassigned. So let's say again, you declare a variable using var, and later you wanted to change the value, and you simply assign a new value to it. Var allows reassigning. And the most important thing, again, hoisting. Hoisting, what hoisting does is it takes the variable declaration to the top of its scope, so that it is available to the top of its scope. So when a variable is declared using var, it is hoisted to the top of its scope, and will be given automatically undefined value by JavaScript. So when I say hoisting, let's say this is so here we declared var, and var is, because var is function scoped, this entire thing is its scope. So this is hoisted to the top of its scope. So let's say here, so JavaScript hoists the value because it is declared with var, and will be given undefined. But because we did not reach, if you try to access the variable before its declaration, let's comment it. And yeah, because I'm trying to print the value, I'm trying to access the variable before its declaration. Variable var is hoisted and is given undefined by JavaScript. When I try to console log it, it will print undefined. You can see it is undefined. And if you declare it, let's say we don't have a function, so let's not do this. So let's say we do not have a function, and we are declaring a variable age. Now because we don't have a function, this becomes global. So the scope of this variable is now global, like it is available throughout the program. But we are trying to access the variable before its declaration. It is hoisted and is given the value undefined. So here it will print undefined, but this variable, the scope of this variable is now global. This is called global object variable. This is about var. Now why we are not using var in modern JavaScript? We are not using this variable because it is the old way of declaring variables, and it can be redeclared, and also it is function scoped. Because of this, it causes bugs. To avoid these bugs, to avoid these bugs, let and const were introduced. So now we'll discuss about let and then const, and then we'll see what are the differences between these three JavaScript variables. So you will understand why we should not use var. So next, let. In let, we can declare variables that can change. So we can declare variables that can change, and let is block scoped. What do I mean block scoped? So for now, we'll try to see this example. We'll try to see. So let's say we have this same function. Before, when we try to console log using var, it is available, like because it is function scoped, the variable is available throughout this function. Now we will use let. Again, let is block scoped, so it is available only in the block it is declared. So we declared let in the if block, so it can be accessible only inside the if block. If we try to access outside the if block, what we'll see is an error. Name is not defined. Name is not defined because it is not accessible outside of its scope. When we try to access this, it gives you an error. What happens when you try to access it before its initialization? So let's say here, so it is initialized, it is declared in this line and initialized with value Alex, but you are trying to access it before that. Now again, let is also hoisted. Let is also hoisted to the top of its scope. So it is block scoped and this is its scope. So let is hoisted here. But to prevent the errors, JavaScript does not, to prevent the bugs, JavaScript does not give initialize with any value. Like it will not initialize let with any value. It waits for the variable declaration, variable initialization. So it tells the program that you cannot access the variable before its declaration. So in as we are trying to access it in line 6, we will get an error, a reference error. So what this saying is, as I said, JavaScript reads the entire scope when we hit run. When we hit run, it reads the entire scope. So here it knows this is a runtime error. Reference error is a runtime error. So it did not find any errors while reading the code. While reading the code, it did not find any errors. But while reading the code, it knows that there is a variable name. There is a variable name in the scope, inside the scope, but it is saying that you cannot access it before its initialization. It is not initialized yet, but so you cannot access it. And if you try to access it outside the scope, we got the same reference error. Sorry. We got the same reference error, but it is like name is not defined. So name is defined in the scope, but it is not accessible in the scope, even though it is a reference error, but this is two different errors. So when JavaScript error this file, it knows there is a variable, but not in the scope. So name is not defined. But when we try to access it in the same scope, but before declaration, it is giving us an error. You cannot access the variable before its initialization. So this is the difference between let and var. Now the next property of let is it cannot be redeclared. It cannot be redeclared. What do you mean by that? So let a equal to 10, and let's say after writing some code, I forgot that I used the variable a already, and I wanted to use a variable. I forgot I used a, and I wanted to declare another variable with value 20. Now if you can see, it is already highlighting that there is you already know what a block scope is. I will give you a quick example. If true const age equal to 25, let's say 25, and I try to access it outside the if block, you can see the difference. VS Code directly shows you the difference. When I write when I try to access it inside this block, it is highlighting it, and if I try to access it outside the block, it is not highlighting it. it is saying, it is simply indicating that it is not being used anywhere. So we'll run it. I need to clear this. Yeah. So it is giving you age is not defined, because age is defined only in this block, and it can be accessible, it is accessible only in that block. So if we run it now, it will give you value 25. This is again block scoped, and this does not support redeclaration or reassigning. So now redeclaration or reassigning. So once you declare const Alex, and you cannot redeclare it. So what error it would give when you're trying to redeclare. It is already throwing you an error here. You cannot redeclare it, and also like let, you cannot reassign it. So log name. So I declared my variable with const, and given the value Alex, and I'm trying to change the value. I'm trying to update it to Nick. So when I try to run it, it will give me an error, assignment to constant variable. So this cannot be reassigned. And also using let, you can just declare a variable, but need not to initialize any value to it. You can declare like this, but and you can use it later. You can assign a value later, like it doesn't throw in an error. But const must be initialized with a value at the time of initialization, otherwise it will throw an error. So let's see the error. So here, in case of let, if you try to access it, it will give you undefined. Like the variable is there, but it has no value. So undefined means it has no value. Again, this is given by JavaScript to it. But in case of const, if I try to run it, syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration. So const when declared must be initialized with a value. And also this is also hoisted to the top. Again, we'll see this hoisted to the top, but it will wait till the declaration for you to access it. So if you try to access it before declaration, it will throw you an error. This waiting is called temporal dead zone, and we'll discuss, as I said, we'll discuss more about temporal dead zone later. Now, why? Now we saw the differences between these three, var, let, and const. Now we what to use when. So we use let when we know that we are going to change the values. Like so, if you are using let, if you are using like let's say age, it is 25, and after some time age is going to be 26. In that case, you are going to use let, and you're going to use const for values those will not change. For names, you will use for user, let's suppose a username, you will use const, and you will assign it the value Alex. Name is not going to change for a person, right? In most cases. So you'll use If you know that value is not going to change, then you'll use const. And if for the values that change, you'll use let. And we need to avoid var at any cost, because it will cause it because of its properties, redeclaration and functional scope. It will cause unnecessary bugs, and also hoisting and given a value undefined, it will cost unnecessary bugs. We'll discuss more about global object also later. And for interviews, if they ask about temporal dead zone, you can say something like temporal dead zone is the time between hoisting and actual declaration of let and const. So hoisting is like, as I said, it is, it will take your declaration to the top of its scope. But in case of let and const, it will wait for you to access it till you reach the declaration, you reach the actual declaration. And using them before declaration causes an error. Now here is a quick summary. Variables store data so we can reuse values. JavaScript has var, let, and const. Var is function scoped, hoisted to undefined. It can be redeclared and attaches to the global object. So we avoid it in modern JavaScript. And let is block scoped, hoisted, but it is in temporal dead zone, TDZ. It can be reassigned and used when values change. Const. Const is also block scoped, hoisted, but it is also in temporal dead zone. It cannot be reassigned, and it must be initialized with a value at the time of declaration. And use this by default. Like for every declaration you're going to do, try to use const. And if you're sure that you're going to change the value later on, use let. If you're not sure that if the value is going to change, use const. And uh, initially, to get a habit of it, try to use const. And you will understand when to use what, because sometimes it will throw you error, because you're trying to assign a value, and you will get this type error, assignment to a constant variable. Then you will understand when to use const and when to use let. But by default, try to use const. So that's JavaScript variables. You know why let and const exist, how scope, hoisting, and TDZ work, and when to use each keyword. In modern JavaScript, use const by default, let when values change, and avoid var. In the next video, we'll build on this foundation and move forward.